Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sophia Hernandez. I am a coordinator too within the Office of Student Financial Aid and Scholarships, and I'm joined by some other staff members from our office today to give you some more information about what's next as you start your journey at UF. So we're going to be talking about some financial aid basics, some tips and information that may be helpful to you as you're transitioning into your undergraduate years here at the University of Florida. We will answer questions at the very end. So if you have any, you can definitely keep them until then. Otherwise, you can put your questions in the chat and my colleagues will do their best to answer them. And if not, I will answer them at the end. But for now, I'll go ahead and turn off my video so we can focus on the presentation. We'll go ahead and get started. So once again, this is the agenda of what we'll be covering today. So we'll be doing a quick overview about financial aid basics, the process of receiving financial aid, what students need to do to continue receiving that financial aid over these upcoming few years, utilizing your 1.UF. And then again, we'll answer any questions that you might have about the financial aid process at the very end. So we'll start off with an overview. So as part of your journey to UF so far, you've completed a couple of these items, or maybe you're planning to complete them. We'll start off with the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, which you'll need to complete for any need-based grants, student loans, or federal work study. Another application you most likely have already completed is the Florida Financial Aid Application, or the FFAA. This is going to be for state programs like Bright Futures. Now, there is a deadline for this, so you need to have this application completed by August 31st. So if you still need to submit it or need to update your information, make sure you are including the University of Florida. But you've done a ton to get to this point. You've been admitted, you've done these financial aid applications, you most likely have a financial aid package. So what's next? That's the whole point of this presentation, to ensure, as smooth as a transition as possible. It's important to understand your college expenses as well as your financial aid and the requirements that come with it. So we'll go over some tips and next steps to keep in mind before you begin your fall classes in just a few days. So we all know that college costs money. So let's talk about some of the costs associated with going to college. So at every institution, there are various types of educational related expenses like your tuition and fees, your books, course materials, supplies, transportation, living expenses, other personal expenses. And if you're taking out federal loans, then federal student loan fees. All of this creates our cost of attendance. So these are education related expenses that our students experience while they're enrolled in college courses. We update this every single year to reflect the estimated average costs of each of these components. Now, costs are going to vary based off of your actual tuition charged, residency, maybe you're living with a parent on campus, maybe you're out of state, and also your academic careers. So if you're UF Online, maybe if you have a different major, your cost of attendance can vary. This determines how much financial aid our office can award to students. And it's also, again, an estimate of educational expenses that our students incur in an academic year to help you plan throughout the year. So here's kind of a bigger breakdown of it. So the cost of attendance includes both direct costs and indirect costs. So direct costs, those are going to be your university charges that we, the institution, bill you, the student. So for example, your tuition and fees, maybe if you buy books from a bookstore, or if you're living in a dorm, or if you have a meal plan. Indirect costs are going to be items and bills that the university doesn't bill you for. You're buying them on your own. So think clothes, personal expenses, maybe your books if you're buying them from an outside source, or if you're living off campus and you're paying rent to another entity. It's important to consider your costs whenever you are looking at your financial aid or maybe other financial assistance you may be receiving, thinking, can this income cover all of your expenses? Are there other affordable options available to you? And just a quick note for students, you may notice with the pie chart, one of the biggest components of your cost of attendance is going to be your living expenses. So just keep that in mind. How do you pay for all of these expenses, right? So there's a couple different payment options. So maybe you have a college savings plan like Florida Prepaid. If you have Florida Prepaid, that is handled by the University Bursar's office and it's based on your social security number. So as long as there is a plan with your social security number on it, it will automatically be billed. The only action you need to take is if you want to opt out and don't want to use it. Maybe you're on a full scholarship, you want to save it for later, you'll opt out. Maybe you have a third-party sponsor. So third-party sponsors can pay a student's tuition, fees, mandatory health insurance. It can be a private or public organization, maybe a trust account, something like that. You do have required documentation that you need to submit, just authorizing a specific amount that will be covered over that specific time period, letter of acknowledgement. But the important part, if you have a third-party sponsor, is that it needs to be submitted before the end of the first week of classes. You can submit it in person, by mail, by fax, or by email. You can also pay out of pocket through your one.uf. So you can do an electronic check with your routing/bank info. You can use a debit credit card. There's also the option for payment plans. If you have any questions about the payment plans, they are fall and spring only. And you can always contact the University Bursar's office, especially if you have questions about what charges may be eligible, they will be your best point of contact. You can also pay in person if you would like. The Bursar's office does not accept cash. So if you want to pay in person, it would have to be either a personal check, a cashier's check, or a money order. And just like before, these can be mailed. You can drop it off in person. They also have a 24-hour drop box right outside of their office. If you're using any of these methods, you just want to make sure that your information is on that check so that the bursar can apply it to the correct account. And you can actually get your money. We know exactly who it goes to. So that's definitely an important note whenever you are sending in checks. So another form of payment is going to be financial aid, and that'll be what we focus on today. So there's different types of financial aid. There's grants and scholarships, scholarships like Bright Futures, maybe outside private scholarships. There's student employment and there's student loans. For most federal aid programs, you are going to need to complete a FAFSA, that free application for federal student aid. That's very important, especially if it is a need-based program. That FAFSA is required because it provides us with your student aid index or your SAI, which we use to determine a student's financial need. Now, there might also be other outside applications, for example, for scholarships. So you just want to make sure that you are completing any and all applications that you need for the programs that you are set to receive. And keep in mind, eligibility can vary on these different programs. So can the amount for what a student is eligible for. So, eligibility for maybe a grant may be different from a scholarship that you earn from an outside source. So just keep that in mind that all of your financial aid awards may have different things that you have to do in order to keep them or that you receive them for. And we'll look at some more common financial aid options that our students come in with. The first of which is going to be the Florida Bright Futures Scholarship. So a lot of our students come in with this scholarship. This is going to be for students who are Florida residents. And again, you have to submit that FFAA application. You only have to do it once. Once you complete it and you're eligible, you can continue to receive the award as long as you're meeting requirements like a GPA requirement, you're passing your courses, and you are at least half-time. So that's one of the biggest things too. Students have to be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours every semester they want to use it, whether it's fall, spring, summer. You have to be at least half-time. And then another important note while you're here, if during your time here at UF you have to drop any courses, just know that you will have to pay back Bright Futures for the courses that have been dropped. Now, there's two different levels. So there's the Florida Academic Scholars. So 100% of a student's tuition and fees are covered. And in order to continue renewing, you have to maintain a 3.0 GPA and complete the credit hours you are enrolled in. There is also the Florida Medallion Scholars. So this one covers 75% of tuition and fees. And in order to continue renewing this scholarship, you need to maintain a 2.75 GPA and complete the credit hours that you're enrolled in. Another award is Federal Work Study. So in order to be eligible for Federal Work Study, a FAFSA needs to be completed. It is a need-based award, so we need that FAFSA. And again, students have to be enrolled at least half-time to be eligible to complete these roles. So Federal Work Study eligible students have this award on their award package. If it's on there, you can look for student assistance jobs on campus specifically for Federal Work Study students. You would use the job website and search for jobs that interest you, and of course, submit your cover letter and resume and go through the hiring process. If hired, you can work up to 20 hours each week, and you would earn a paycheck every other week that goes directly to you, the student. If you're interested, great way to network, meet faculty and staff on campus, get work experience in something that you're interested in, possibly wanting to get a job in afterwards. That way, when you're graduating with your degree, you'll have experience in something that correlates to it, and it'll set you up for success. So again, if you're interested in participating in Federal Work Study, make sure it's on your package, and then you can find employment through jobs.ufl.edu. Another type of financial aid are federal student loans. So federal student loans require a FAFSA, and again, that half-time enrollment, so 6 credit hours. And there's different types of loans, right? So there's subsidized and unsubsidized loans. These are going to be loans that the student takes out under their name. The difference, subsidized loans are need-based and interest-free while the student is enrolled. No interest accrues until a student graduates or withdraws from school. For the federal direct unsubsidized loans, these do accrue interest while a student is in school. But for both of these loans, students aren't required to make payments until 6 months after they graduate. Just keep in mind, if you have the unsubsidized loan, interest is accruing, so you can definitely make payments early if you're able to. If you have a loan, it'll be offered to you on your 1.UF. You do not have to accept a loan. You can decline it, you can reduce it to a specific amount that you know that you'll need. Again, we always encourage our students not to take out more than they need to, so keep that in mind if you are considering loans to pay for your educational expenses. If accepted, just know you have to do an entrance counseling and a master promissory note on studentaid.gov, and that'll be what allows us to disperse your loan. So there's a couple steps that you need to take if you are seeking this type of financial aid. Students can only take out a certain amount of loans every year. Sometimes it's not enough to cover all of their expenses. So there's also an option for parents to apply for a Parent Plus loan. Same as the other loans, it can be awarded for a specific amount, but this one can also be up to a student's cost of attendance for their educational expenses. It does require a FAFSA application, but these loans are taken out under the parent's name. So instead of the student being the borrower, the parent is the borrower. And again, the loan starts accruing interest while the student is in school. Your parents have to submit a supplemental application on studentaid.gov, and it's based on credit history. If they're approved, they can take out the loan. We will add it onto your package. If denied, students can always contact our department about other options to them, but that's only if they're denied. We can talk to you about different financial aid resources that may be available to you. The next 8 option are going to be scholarships. So these are going to be additional scholarships outside of what you might receive from FAFSA, Bright Futures, or UF. Our colleges and universities offer a lot of scholarships to our students, but there are plenty more that can be found from other organizations. You can look for organizations in your community that you may be a part of. Perhaps your employer or your parents' employer offers opportunities to students. Your college or department website may have specific options and resources for you regarding scholarships for their students. You can also use reputable scholarship search engines. So one of those, at our institution, we have a SFA scholarship search engine where you can look for both college awarded and private scholarships available at UF. There's a screenshot to kind of show you what it looks like. You can filter based off of your major, your class standing, GPA, and other things to look for scholarships. So you want to make sure that you are searching often and you're applying for as many as you can. You just want to be careful for scams. Uh, any type of scholarship that may be asking you to pay for information you can find yourself, or it guarantees that you'll get aid, or it's asking for your credit card or banking information. Maybe want to be a little wary of those. But once you apply, if you get a outside scholarship, you want to make sure you are reporting that on your one.uf so that our office is aware of it. And we'll talk about in a little bit where exactly you can do that. If your scholarship is mailed, you want to make sure it's to our office. You can see our mailing address on the slide. It's also on our website if you want to look for it later on or need it later on. You can also bring your scholarship in person to the One Stop. You can also drop it off at the drop box that we talked about previously. And again, if you are dropping off anything, you want to make sure your name and your UFID are on the check or documents that you are leaving with us. That way we know exactly who it should go to. So we talked about costs, different financial aid programs, payment options. So now let's talk about how you receive your aid. So once you are admitted to UF, you've completed your FAFSA requirements for Bright Futures, other programs you're awarded, you'll get your comprehensive financial aid award package. So you can see this on your one.uf. It'll list your cost of attendance as well as all of the aid that you've either received or been offered. For the future, you can expect your award package during different times of the year. So for the fall and spring semester, it'll be posted late summer, closer to the beginning of the fall semester. If you are taking summer classes, that summer aid is posted late spring after summer enrollment is confirmed. And it should be posted for you if you've completed your FAFSA application. But as always, you want to make sure that you are keeping an eye on your account and letting us know if there's any technical difficulties that need to be reviewed. Once you receive that aid package, you want to make sure you understand the different eligibility requirements to receive those awards. So, for example, federal aid like need-based grants have different eligibility requirements than perhaps a scholarship like Bright Futures. So for that federal aid, you need to complete the FAFSA, right? For the Bright Futures, you don't. But for both, you need to be half-time. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you know the requirements in order to get it again. Is this an award that you can get from year to year? Some scholarships and grants are only awarded for academic year and not guaranteed year to year. So make sure you know. That way you are aware and you know if you need to supplement some type of income for your following academic year, following time here at UF. So your financial aid package can change depending on your enrollment status, your residency, if you switch majors, or other type of eligibility changes. So keep that in mind. After the dropout period, if your enrollment changes, your award amount might change, but you'll receive a notification from our office. So for example, our award packages are based off of 15 credit hours in the fall, 15 credit hours in the spring. If you're enrolled in less than that, your award package may shift slightly, just to be aligned with the amount of credit hours that you are truly enrolled in after that drop-out period. And again, you want to make sure you're reporting outside scholarships as soon as possible before the semester begins so we can keep those in mind. When it comes to receiving your financial aid, this is kind of the process of it. So students have a drop-out period where you can finalize your schedule, you're adding and dropping courses. After that period ends, we can determine how many credit hours students are truly enrolled in, and we begin our disbursement process. So we take financial aid, scholarships, grants accepted, and we apply those funds to any charges directly billed to the student. On your one.uf, you can see those charges that are being billed to you. So your housing, meal plan, you can use your financial aid to pay for those charges first. If there are more charges than financial aid, you'll have a balance that's up to the student or parent to go back in and pay. You want to make sure you're keeping an eye on your one.uf. That way you're able to pay off any debts that are incurred from the university. If you have more financial aid than charges, you will get a refund. So any money left over after charges are paid off will go to the student as a refund through direct deposit typically. If you haven't already, on your one.uf, you can set up your direct deposit account. Usually it's a checking account under the student's name. So right there, you'll enter your banking information and the money goes right in there. We don't hold refunds for future semesters. The money is going to be given to you, the student, to use for any other educational expenses like books and supplies, maybe rent if you're living off campus. And it's up to the student to use those funds as needed for those expenses. To make sure that disbursements run smoothly, you want to make sure that you permit your financial aid to pay for direct expenses first before it is refunded back to you. If you don't, what we do is we take the financial aid, apply it to your tuition, but if you have any other charges, it's not going to pay for that. So the refund after paying tuition goes straight to the student, and then it is the student's responsibility to go back into their account and pay off any leftover charges. So it's beneficial to give that permission to have your charges taken care of. That way, once you get the refund, you keep the refund for everything else. If UF isn't charging you for a specific expense, let's say you're living off campus, you want to make sure you're budgeting for those funds. That way you're able to pay for them and you know when they're due. So let's take rent, for example. I keep coming back to rent because again, living expenses are one of the biggest components that you will have while you're here at UF. Rent is due on the first, typically for most complexes, every single month. So you want to make sure that you have enough funding once it's dispersed, just once at the beginning of the semester to last you for the entire academic year. So again, financial aid is meant to be used for your educational expenses. This is going to be, for a majority of you, one of the first times where you're going to have to start learning how to manage and budget all of your funds. Again, if you're living off campus, you have other supplies or personal expenses you need, you want to make sure that you're saving your money and you're managing your funds in a way that you don't have to worry about funds later in the semester. Again, there's different types of educational expenses that we talked about before, right? So it's not just your tuition and fees to UF, it's buying books, it's transportation, it's living somewhere, it's eating, it's buying clothes, toiletries, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're budgeting for everything. And if you ever forget, the cost of attendance is on our website, so you can always reference it. You also want to make sure that you're tracking your funds and what you're spending this money on. So if you're spending a lot of money on takeout or clothing and maybe not the other components of your education, related expenses, maybe you want to rethink how you're spending your money. It's got to last you the whole semester, right? So funds are dispersed at the beginning. If you're getting a refund, it's going to be typically in a lump sum at the beginning of the semester to cover you until the end. So you want to make sure that you're prioritizing your spending and you're thinking about any financial goals that you might have. So, for example, maybe you want to study abroad next semester or in the future during your time here at UF. Maybe you keep that in mind. Study abroad, very popular, very common, great opportunity. It does cost a bit because you're going off into whatever program is by your college. So you want to think about that. Financial stress can impact your performance, your well-being. So you want to make sure that you are staying financially literate, and you're managing your money and your funds well. So we'll talk about maintaining your eligibility for financial aid. If you're receiving any federal financial aid programs like Pell Grant, Federal Work Study, federal student loans, the federal government requires students to maintain satisfactory academic progress, or SAP, or else most aid eligibility is terminated. So you have to maintain a cumulative GPA of 2.0. You have to complete 67% of your attempted coursework, and you have to complete your degree within 180 credit hours. Now, we check SAP at the end of every spring semester. If for some reason you are not meeting SAP, you'll be notified to your UF email and on your one.uf on your financial aid summary. See an example in just a little bit. From which point you can complete a petition available on our website if there's some extenuating circumstance that happened throughout the academic year. Things happen, things come up. You can submit that petition, let our office know. That way we can evaluate it. And if it's approvable, your financial aid eligibility can be reinstated. Other things you want to make sure you're doing is completing any requirements on your one.uf. So if you're submitting a FAFSA, sometimes students are selected for verification. It's a federal process where your FAFSA application is reviewed to ensure that the data is correct and accurate. If you're selected, it'll show on your one.uf page under your to-do list. We use a third party called ProEd to do the verification process. Any documentation needed will be submitted directly to them. Once that process is completed, our office receives notification and we can continue with your financial aid. Also, if you have any loans, again, there's requirements you have to complete if you want them. So you have to accept them. That's step one. You also have to complete an entrance counseling and a master promissory note. And if they are federal student loans, you need to enroll in at least 6 credit hours. And again, these will show up on your to-do list as well on your one.uf. Most financial aid requires the free application for federal student aid or the FAFSA. This is not automatic. You have to do it every single year to be considered for federal aid. If you want to be considered, you want to make sure you're doing it as soon as possible. And just to know, this information is based on prior tax information. So if your current financial situation is not reflected by the FAFSA, there are petitions, right? So for example, the 2025-2026 FAFSA is based off of 2023 tax return information. So if things have changed, maybe there was a loss of income, you can submit a petition to our office. That way we take into account your current financial standing instead of the 2023 info. Most awards also require students to be enrolled in at least 6 credit hours. So keep that in mind whenever you're choosing your classes and you're managing your aid or budget. This is especially important for the summertime. So half-time for all students is going to be 6 credit hours, regardless if it's fall, spring, or summer. So just keep that in mind and remember that. We're almost at the end, I promise. And again, we will get to your questions. But one final topic we want to touch on is your 1.UF, where you can see all of the information we just went through. So this is definitely a page you want to be familiar with. It's going to be where you register for your courses, you see your schedule, your grades, any charges, financial aid, and it'll be where you find the authorization information release form. So there are laws that prohibit UF from releasing information concerning a student's record without the consent of the student. So if you'd like us to talk to any third party, this includes your parents, about your finances, or you'd like them to talk to us about anything, you will need to give them the authority to do so if you so choose. And to access your 1.UF, you need to have a GatorLink username and a password, but you can operate it on your phone, any tablets, any desktops, anytime and anywhere. When you first log in, this is what the home page will look like. And at the top, you'll see the action item summary. So you'll see holds, items that might prevent disbursements, class registration, getting your diploma. When holds are on there, it indicates what's being held and what can be done to have that hold removed. So you want to make sure that you're clicking in and seeing what you have to submit, any past due balances that you may have to pay, things like that. Your to-dos will also be on there, so requirements that you have to complete, like your MPN or entrance counseling for your loans. And then there's also an info section for general notices. So for example, you might have one about the FAFSA being available for completion. These can be posted by a bunch of departments on campus. So when it's there, you'll be told why it's been there, why it's been posted, what's impacted, and what you need to do to kind of satisfy it if applicable. You can also see your campus finance page, so the charges posted on your account, your tuition, your health insurance, meal plan, those charges will be on this page. This will also be where you can sign up for a direct deposit if you haven't done so already. There's also the financial aid section. So that's going to be where you can look at your aid for the academic year, the package that's been offered to you, especially also for respective years, with the breakdown of what you're receiving. So this is what your financial aid summary page will look like. When you click on that financial aid section page, this is what you're going to see. So at the top, you'll see the SAP section we mentioned earlier. So again, if you're receiving any federal aid like grants, federal work study loans, you have to be maintaining SAP. And this will be where you can see your progress on your 1.UF in order to keep your financial aid eligibility. Underneath that, you'll see a summary of your federal aid and cost of attendance, which we talked about the breakdown. You can see that breakdown per semester here. So this one has fall and spring. And again, these are going to be averages of education-related expenses. So it doesn't mean that you'll accumulate the amounts that's posted. The whole point of the cost of attendance is to help students budget for the academic year. And again, depending on your schedule after drop add, this number may even change if you're taking more or less credits than we've predicted. Then you'll see your actual aid package. So the grants, scholarships, any federal work study that you've been awarded will show there. Again, if you're getting federal work study, it'll pop up on your award package, but you do have to apply for a job, get hired, and earn pay to actually get the award. Any student loans offered to you will also be on here. You should see an option to take action where you can accept it, reduce, or decline the loan. If you're or your parents are interested in a Parent Plus loan, you would do that application through studentaid.gov separately. For fall, you'll only see awards in the fall 2025 and spring 2026 column if offered aid. Again, you'll get the award details, those amounts offered and accepted, and then also the cumulative and by semester amounts. the very bottom, you will see self-reported additional aid. So this will be for anybody receiving additional aid. You can report it to our office, list the name, how much you're receiving, and once it comes in, we can add it to your financial aid award package. Again, make sure you're reporting this before the semester begins so your aid package can be as accurate as possible. That way we have all of the information at a given time. But financial aid is definitely a really important aspect to many of our students' success. So in this presentation, we reviewed what financial aid is, different types of awards, how to apply for it, and how to receive it. Sorry, I had a little tickle in my throat. You want to make sure that you are asking before you act. So if you have any questions, you want clarification about something, you can always visit our website. There's a ton of information on there. You can also contact the One Stop. They're very nice. They have so much knowledge on financial aid, campus finances, holds, registrations, transcripts. They know it all. So if you have any questions, definitely reach out to them. For example, maybe you're thinking about not enrolling halftime. You can ask them how that impacts your aid before you choose to take that step. They're available Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the phone or in person or online. As the semester starts for the fall, keep in mind if you have a question, I would really encourage you to go in person. A lot of people are going to be having questions. So if you can spare the moment as you're moving in, head in person. They take walk-ins and ask your question. That way your question can directly get answered as well as any follow-ups that you might have. So definitely recommend that. And that's all I have for today. So we end this presentation at 5. So we will go through some of the questions that you may have. I'm sure it's a lot of information, so hopefully it's helpful to you. And again, we have some of our team members in the chat if you want to ask questions there. But I will start from the top of the chat and work our way down, seeing what's been answered and what hasn't been answered yet. I can also turn on my camera so you can see me. We'll make this big. Okay. So we'll start at the very top. So we got asked, when is financial aid distributed? So financial aid is typically distributed after the first week of classes, after that drawback period has ended, once we can calculate how many credit hours a student is truly enrolled in. So that'll be when the majority of it is distributed. Make sure that all of your holds and requirements are completed. That way there's nothing stopping it. Let's see what hasn't been answered. So another question that may not have been answered was, what happens if the charges due before the aid is dispersed? That is a great question. So students have charges on their account, right? And there's due dates set by the bursar's office of when those payments need to be in. And so you get a late payment fee. So if you have financial aid, such as loans, bright futures, grants, aid that we are waiting to receive, those students get a financial aid deferred deadline to allow our office some time to get those funding from the federal government, from the state, and to get your account all up to date. So your charges wouldn't be due until that point. Otherwise, your charges sit on your account until they get paid. Whether that's you don't have any financial aid, you have the regular fee payment deadline, or you have financial aid and you get the deferred deadline to give our office time to load in those awards and get that paid to you. Let's keep scrolling down. Susanna also shared some helpful links to you throughout the presentation while I was talking about. If you have those saved or open them, that way you can have them for later. So Erin asked, how will aid work for charges due before aid is distributed, such as the meal plan that's due on 9/1? So first up, you want to make sure that there's financial aid on your account. So you have been offered some type of like institutional, federal aid, state aid that we're waiting on funds for to get that deferred tuition deadline for financial aid. It should be released. Again, we started disbursements after drop add. That's when we start dispersing everybody aid. So in those coming weeks, if you don't see your aid dispersed, let's say you're supposed to get the federal Pell Grant and you don't see it on your account yet, after some time has passed and your charges are about to be due, definitely reach out. There might be something that we have to review on your account, something we have to connect, fix, resend. So definitely keep an eye on your account, but it should pay for those charges. Okay, we also got asked, how do I ensure my books are covered by financial aid? So again, any charges on your account, if you allow the institution to put your financial aid towards them, you authorize us to pay charges on your account with financial aid, it'll get paid. Otherwise, when we package students, we're packaging you and giving you aid based off of your cost of attendance, right? So books and supplies are included in that. Depending on where you get your books would just depend how you use your aid. So either you've authorized UF to pay your charges with your financial aid and it'll automatically happen, or maybe you're buying them from a third party. Any refund you get uh, after your aid is dispersed, you would go in and use those specifically for that. What happens if financial aid disperses after the due date of a large charge from the bursar? So that's a great question. So one of the things with the financial aid deferment deadline, I'm getting most of it. That's the gist of what it's called. So students who don't have any aid incoming have a deadline, like a tuition deadline. They have to pay their tuition by XYZ date, or they get a late payment fee. What the financial aid tuition deferred deadline does is it acknowledges the fact that we sometimes have to wait for funding. Sometimes we are sending the information to the state, to OSPA, who handles Bright Futures, and we're waiting to receive funding back to disperse to our students. It acknowledges that. That way, these students, we know that you're waiting on aid. It's on your award package. We see that you're eligible to get it. So you get that deferred deadline to account for that. So usually the due date, again, is going to be that deferred deadline. But that's to give us enough time to disperse you the aid that you're eligible for. If there's any charges afterwards, like leftover, as we mentioned in the presentation, that would be something that you would have to consider covering, whether it's trying to apply for another scholarship or paying out of pocket. I believe, okay, in the case of Bright, hopefully these are answering your questions. If not, I'll keep trying to get to them. In the case of Bright Futures, will that automatically be applied to our tuition, or is it directly deposited and then we have to pay? Is it automatically applied? How does that work? So great question. So odds are, if you are, and at this point, you most likely are enrolled for the fall semester, you're gonna see your tuition and fee charges already on your account. Great. Bright Futures won't disperse until after the dropout period because it's based on your credit hour enrollment, right? So if you're enrolled in 6 credit hours, it'll pay, let's say you're in the academic, right? You have Bright Futures, academic scholar, it's paying 100% of your tuition and fees. After dropout, if you're in 6 credit hours, it will take 6 times $212.71. That's how much a credit hour is at UF for our in-state students. And that'll be what is dispersed to your account. Now, with Bright Futures, it is based on your credit hours, right? So kind of based on your tuition. If you have some other source of funding that's paying your tuition, let's say you have Florida Prepaid, right? It's a very popular question we get. Florida Prepaid would pay for your tuition, right? Bright Futures will come in afterwards and still disperse to you 6 times to 1271. So you'll still get the amount, whether it's paying for your tuition or not, just depends on if you are receiving another type of aid or program that's going to pay that first. So if that makes sense, it should be automatic, but sometimes there are discrepancies with your social, with date of birth, name. So since it is your first semester coming into UF, you want to make sure that after dropout happens, your Bright Futures is showing on your award package, and it is successfully dispersing. If not, again, you want to reach out and make sure that all of your information is correct with us. We have the correct info with the state. That way you get your funds. So definitely keep an eye on it, but that's kind of how it works, if that makes sense. We'll keep going. Oh, okay. I kind of answered this one, but we'll talk about it a little bit more. If Florida Academic is covering my tuition, will other financial aid like you have scholarships and the FAFSA cover housing and books? Sure, yes. If your Bright Futures is covering your tuition, great. You have academic, it's covering 100% of that. Tuition's taken care of. So your other financial aid, if you authorize us, will go to pay your other charges on your account, like your housing, like the meal plan, like books from the bookstore if you purchase them. But that's if you have been authorized to allow that to happen. If not, the refund goes back to you, the student, and then you go back and pay for it with your financial aid. Hopefully that answered your question. How do we authorize it? Oh, I was just about to say, if you scroll up, Susanna will have posted it, but she just shared that. So the next question was, how should we look to make sure we've allowed it to use our financial aid to pay for charges? Will there be a hold or a to do? There won't be a hold or a to do just because it's not required and it's not impacting per se anything. So Susanna sent the procedures to grant permission above to another student. If you want to scroll up, I think just a little bit, just above your question. You would log into your one.uf, you navigate to campus finances, Bursar is what it says, and then you select view my account and authorize student permissions, Title IV aid. But that'll be how you do it. And again, you always want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on your account to make sure things are flowing smoothly. Just make sure everything's working the way that you intended to work. Okay, the next question. So if you have direct deposit set up, let me read this first. Okay, so basically the question is asking if you have your tuition waived for some reason or another, will you still get Bright Futures and how much will you get Bright Futures for? So similar to Florida Prepaid, if you have something that's paying for your tuition directly, you've still earned Bright Futures. The state will still pay you the amount that you have earned, received, completed. So if you want to do some calculations to figure it out, a UF credit hour is $212 with 71 cents. So if you have the Florida Academic, which this person who did it does, you would multiply that times however many credit hours you're in, and that'll be what you're dispersed from UF for Bright Futures. Now, again, just to keep saying it, you have to be enrolled at least half-time, so keep that in mind. Whether it's fall, spring, summer, have to be half-time. If you have the Florida Medallion Scholars, it covers 75%. If you want to do the math, it's $159.53. So that'll be how much it pays out per credit hour, at least 6 for Bright Futures. So you can definitely calculate it if you'd like to. Again, your packages are based off of 15 credit hours, fall, 15 spring. So if there's a semester where you are considering being in less than 15, um, your package and your aid programs are going to change, right? Especially Bright Futures, that's based on your credit hour enrollment. So if you want to do the math on your own, that'll be what you do. We'll keep scrolling. So this question was, should I not authorize student permissions if I plan to use other scholarships to pay charges instead of the Florida Pell Grant? So it's up to you. The student permissions is definitely up to the student. It's not required. We encourage all of our students to do it just because it makes the process a little bit easier than you having to like get a refund, go back in again. And then maybe something slips through the cracks. Your financial aid is as a whole, right, is intended for your cost of attendance. So whether you plan to use, let's say, a 2000, let's say the only fee that you have with UF is a $2,000 tuition charge, right? Let's just say whether you use $2,000 from your private scholarship or $2,000 from your Pell Grant, the money being refunded back to you would essentially remain the same. So it's up to you if you would like to. That's just some quick math. It's up to you if you would like to authorize it. I would definitely, we always recommend our students to, just to make the process a little bit easier and not have so much back and forth. But it's definitely up to the student. Again, it's not required, just something that makes it a little bit smoother. When is the deferred deadline for tuition and other fees? Great question. On, I get it wrong sometimes. I believe on the Bursar's website, they have an important dates section. There's two. There's both the university registrar and the Bursar's office both have important dates and deadlines. And Susanna posted it. Thank you, Susanna. They update the dates every year for the academic year to show students what the deferred deadline is, what the regular deadline is, when classes get canceled, things like that. So she went ahead and shared it. If you also have the same question, she shared the link in Ryan's question. But that'll be where you see that deferred deadline. And on the registrar's site, you'll see like add drop, things like that for their important deadlines and dates. Are grants based on credit hour? I thought things like Pell Grant or things based on FAFSA were based on full-time or part-time. So it depends. So you mentioned the federal Pell Grant. So that one is currently based on credit hours. So that is, I think, the only federal award that students do not need to be half-time to receive. And Susanna sent it. But most financial aid requires you to be half-time. And then after that, depending on what aid you're receiving, it may be limited based on your cost of attendance. For example, need-based programs, they're need-based. We can only give you financial aid up to your cost of attendance. So your cost of attendance changes based on your enrollment, right? So a half-time student is going to have a cost of attendance that's different than a full-time student. So then your aid changes within that as well. So it gets a little complicated. So if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to the One Stop. Again, I really recommend going in person, especially if you have questions while the semester is starting. That way they can look at your aid package and kind of tell you specifically what your awards do, how many credit hours you might need to be to get it again or to get it at all. There's a lot of fluctuating factors with that. And they can sit there one-on-one with you. Oh my goodness, and we reached the bottom of the list. So, who can I talk to if I don't see bright futures on my financial aid package? Great question. So, couple things. So, you want to make sure that on your OSFA portal, so your Office of Student Financial Assistance, that'll be where you filled out your application for Bright Futures. You want to make sure that your information on there matches UF. So if you have a Social Security with us and you don't with them, you want to make sure you update that, or vice versa. You want to make sure your name is correct, that social, even though you have it in both places, that it's also correct, and your name matches and everything. Then you can reach out to the One Stop, let them know, hey, I looked on my account. I said I'm going to the University of Florida for the 2025-2026 academic year. It's not on my account. They'll take a look, make sure that we've received that information that you're eligible to get the award, and then they'll reach out to our office to double check that eligibility. Now, since you all are incoming students, sometimes we're still waiting on, yeah, there it is, the one-stop info that Susanna posted. Sometimes we're still waiting to get that master list from OSFA to tell us exactly what students are eligible. So the biggest thing, if you choose to wait, is to make sure that you are keeping an eye on your account after the dropout period. Because after the dropout period, our Bright Futures team is going to run all their calculations, see who's eligible, send that information to OSFA, get it back. So if it hasn't dispersed, again, after the dropout period, within those coming weeks, before your tuition deadline, reach out. Please reach out. That way we can take a look at your account, see if maybe there's an issue with your social, maybe it has to be manually linked, maybe we have to contact OSFA to double check things. Just moral of the story, if something seems off on your package or something's not there that you were expecting, reach out. The One Stop's here to help you. A lot of people on campus, if not everybody, is here to help you in one way, shape, or form. So just reach out if you have any questions. If they don't know the answer, they will direct you to someone who does know the answer. But otherwise, I think we've answered pretty much all of the questions. As Susanna said, thank you for joining us all for our Fall 25 What's Next presentation. If you have any follow-up questions, if you think of one, tomorrow, you can always reach out to the One Stop. They are here literally to help you. So please reach out, and they can sit with you one-on-one and answer your questions. But otherwise, I hope you have a great fall semester and a great start of your 4 years at UF. Bye.